there. You ready to dive into some serious dentistry meets AI action? You sent over this fascinating research about deep learning and cavity detection, a systematic review from the Journal of Dentistry, and, well, let's just say we were hooked.
It's definitely a hot topic.
So right off the bat, can we talk about how even experienced dentists sometimes struggle to catch those sneaky cavities early on?
Absolutely. Early detection is tricky, even for seasoned pros.
The research mentioned that traditional methods like visual exams and x-rays can miss a surprising number of early lesions. Honestly, that blew my mind a little.
It's true, and it highlights a real challenge in dentistry.
I mean, we're talking about experienced dentists using x-rays and everything, yet those tiny cavities can still slip through the cracks.
It happens more often than you'd think, and the problem is catching those cavities early means simpler, less invasive treatment later on.
Makes total sense, and that's where AI steps in, right? With our fancy new AI dentist.
Precisely. And it's not some futuristic fantasy anymore. This is happening now. Deep learning, a type of AI that learns like our brains do, is already analyzing dental images with remarkable accuracy.
Okay, hold on. Before we get ahead of ourselves, let's break it down for our listeners. How does this even work? Are we talking about showing a computer a zillion pictures of teeth and saying, hey, find the bad ones?
You're on the right track. Imagine feeding a deep learning model tons and tons of dental images, x-rays, photographs, you name it. Some images show healthy teeth, others show cavities at various stages. The AI analyzes all this data and learns the subtle patterns that differentiate a healthy tooth from one with decay.
So the AI is basically teaching itself to become a cavity spotting pro. That's wild. But how good is it, really? Can it truly go head-to-head with a human dentist?
Well, this review looked at 42 different studies, and the accuracy rates were pretty amazing. We're talking anywhere from 71% to, get this, a jaw-dropping 99% in some cases.
A 99%. Seriously, that almost sounds too good to be true. Are we all getting robot dentists soon?
Not so fast. While those numbers are definitely exciting, the review emphasizes that it's still early days for this technology.
So there's more to it than just those impressive accuracy figures.
Absolutely. For one thing, the way these studies were designed, even how they define a cavity, varies a lot.
Okay, so you're saying those varying accuracy rates might depend on how each study defined a cavity?
Exactly. Remember that study that hit that 99% accuracy? Well, it turns out they were looking at a very specific type of cavity on a very specific type of x-ray. It's not like there's one AI dentist out there that's perfect for every situation.
That makes sense. So different types of dental images, like those bite-wing x-rays versus those close-ups, might yield different results, right?
You're catching on quickly. You're exactly right. The type of image definitely matters. This review actually looked at 7 different types of dental images.
7? Wow.
Yeah, everything from those bite-wing radiographs where you bite down on that film to panoramic x-rays, even some really fancy 3D scans.
So some images are easier for the AI to analyze than others, like what worked best?
Well, it's hard to say for sure. Some image types had way more studies done on them. But when it came to those close-up x-rays, like the periapical radiographs,
Okay, yeah.
deep learning models were hitting up to 99.2% accuracy in one study.
Wow, that's incredible. Does that mean the other types of images are basically useless for AI dentistry?
Not at all.
Yeah.
Even with those images where the accuracy wasn't quite as high, the AI still showed a lot of potential, especially in helping less experienced dentists interpret them correctly.
So it's not just about replacing dentists altogether, it's about making that expert-level analysis more accessible, especially in areas where, maybe you don't have as many specialists.
Exactly. And that gets to the heart of why this technology is so promising.
It's pretty exciting stuff.
It is. But it's important to remember there are still a lot of complexities to unpack here.
Oh, right. We were talking about how each study defines a cavity differently.
Right. And that ties into this whole issue of ground truth, which, well, it's a bit more complicated than it sounds.
Ground truth. That sounds kind of deep, like something you'd hear in a philosophy class.
It might sound abstract, but it's actually very straightforward. In AI, ground truth just refers to the accurate data that's used to train the system. So in this case, it's all about how each study determined for sure whether a cavity actually existed in an image. And this is where things get a little, shall we say, messy.
Messy. How so? I mean, a cavity is a cavity, right?
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But here's the thing. Some studies used expert opinions to establish their ground truth.
Okay.
Sometimes just one dentist, sometimes a whole panel. Others use different imaging techniques like fluorescent imaging,
Fancy.
very, or even micro CT scans, which are like super high resolution X-rays.
So basically, the information the AI is learning from might have some wiggle room, depending on the study.
Exactly. And that obviously has a big impact on how reliable and generalizable the findings are. Imagine trying to learn something from a textbook that's full of errors, right?
Yeah, not ideal.
Not at all. And the review really hammers home this point, that future research needs to use more standardized, rigorous methods for establishing this ground truth if we want to fully unlock the potential of deep learning in dentistry.
That makes sense. We need to be teaching these AI dentists with the best textbooks possible. Okay, so we've got all these different imaging techniques, different ways of defining a cavity, and then on top of that, we have this whole range of deep learning models. Earlier, we talked about those convolutional neural networks, the multi-layer perceptrons, and those U-nets. Did any one of those models really stand out in the research?
Well, CNNs definitely seem to be the popular kid in school right now when it comes to dental AI.
I can see why.
Right. But it's not a one-size-fits-all situation. Each model has its own strengths and weaknesses. And honestly, the review didn't point to a clear winner. What it did emphasize, though, was the need for more transparency and consistency in how these models are used and reported.
So it's not just about which model you use, but how you train it, what data you feed it, and how you make sense of the results.
You got it. It's all connected. And it gets even more nuanced than that. Remember how we were talking about different types of cavities?
Like those early ones just starting in the enamel versus those deeper ones?
Exactly. The AI needs to be able to tell them apart because they often need different types of treatment.
Okay, so it's not just a matter of cavity or no cavity. We're asking the AI to play dentist and make a judgment call on how serious that cavity is, too.
You're getting it. And that's where those diagnostic thresholds we touched on earlier come in.
This is fascinating. So we're asking AI to look at a dental image and decide not just if there's a cavity, but how big of a deal it is. That seems like a whole other level.
It is, and the research actually dove into how well these deep learning models could differentiate between different levels of cavity severity.
And how do they do?
Well, remember how we were talking about those diagnostic thresholds? It turns out that's where things get really interesting. The review found that studies focusing on dentin involvement, meaning those deeper, more serious cavities, tended to have higher sensitivity.
Meaning they were really good at not missing those deeper cavities. Those are the ones you really don't want to miss.
Exactly. But there's a bit of a trade-off. Those same studies sometimes overestimated the severity, like a false alarm.
So they're being extra cautious, making sure nothing serious gets missed, even if it means occasionally ringing the alarm bell a bit early.
Precisely. On the flip side, studies that focused on enamel involvement as the threshold, looking at those very early cavities, were less likely to raise a false alarm, but more likely to miss a developing cavity.
Okay, so it's like walking a tightrope, right? You've got to find that sweet spot between catching everything and avoiding unnecessary treatments. It's all about balance.
You've got it. And that's the holy grail. Researchers are chasing an AI system that can accurately identify both early and advanced decay, minimizing both misdiagnoses and false alarms. A true AI dentist wouldn't just tell us if there's a problem, but exactly how big of a problem it is.
Now, that would be a game changer. Imagine the possibilities, especially in areas where access to specialists is limited. It could really level the playing field when it comes to dental care.
Absolutely. And that brings us back to the bigger picture.
What can our listeners take away from all of this? We've covered a lot of ground.
We have. But I think the biggest takeaway is that AI has incredible potential to revolutionize dentistry. Faster, more accurate diagnoses, personalized treatment plans, it's all within reach. But we're not quite there yet.
So it's about staying informed, being curious, and approaching this technology with both excitement and a healthy dose of caution.
You nailed it. As with any powerful tool, it's all about using it responsibly and ethically. We need to keep asking the tough questions, demanding rigorous research, and making sure these advancements benefit everyone.
Well said. This deep dive has certainly given me a lot to chew on. It's amazing to see how far dentistry has come, and I'm excited to see where AI takes it next. Thanks for joining us for this fascinating exploration of the future of oral health. Until next time, keep those pearly whites sparkling and your minds curious.